Hello everybody, welcome back to Farming Simulator 17. We're on the Lone Oak map, created by Bullet Bill, just a lovely map. It's a map that's based on a real-life farm that I got to work on in my growing up years. We are in the middle of wheat harvest, so I'm going to get this fella going again. And kind of like I promised on the last video, I wanted to see how long we had until it rained. Let's see. Aha. Okay, I believe what this is saying is we have sunshine for 4 hours, 22 minutes, and 40 seconds. Then we have some rain, and actually we'll have 20 minutes beyond that even because there's a rain fade that comes in between as the weather transitions from sunshine to the rainfall. So basically, for almost 5 hours, we have that hopefully is sufficient time to get our harvest done, bale up everything, and just get everything done that we need to get done. Oops, I need to set up, not him, I need to get our tractor going, make sure he can find the combine on the field. It's like one setting yet. This is the critical one. Activated. I get him coming a little bit closer to the combine, waiting until fill levels were reached. Yeah, he should be okay for a little while. So while this is harvesting, we're going to keep these guys going in game, and we're going to trust Courseplay to work. Ha ha ha. Something I've alluded to in some other episodes is I keep talking about the grass seed cleaning process, and so I kind of want to cover that a little bit. So we'll just leave this in game, and let's first take a look at a picture or two. I can come out. Well, that's actually a schematic. Let me see if I have the right. Here we go. Um, the building from the outside looks like this. Now, the shop is over here, the brand new shop. I think that's, yeah, you can see kind of the edge of it here. There's a tanks over there where you'd pick up chemical and whatnot. This here isn't included in the map. Bullet Bill opted to put a conventional grain system in here instead. Maybe we can just briefly hop into the map. Let's hop out of our tractor and we'll just go give it a look real quick to compare. Oh, let's see. Does that put me about the right place? Sure. So in game, this is kind of what we have. We have 3 grain bins. We got a grain dryer over there. This is a type of equipment you would see kind of in the Midwest part of the country. It isn't something you would see in the area where I live. Maybe in the eastern part of the state where there's more grain, but it's virtually unheard of here in the Willamette Valley. There just isn't that much grain grown. I mean, there is a lot, but there isn't big grain handling systems like this. At least not that I'm aware of. So then down here, this other shed over here building is what's there in real life. Shaped the same. Oxygen David made that model, I think. And it's a good representation, but they chose to do something different right here in terms of storage of grain and whatnot that comes from the field. So in real life, let me hop back out here just so I can keep an eye on things if I need to. This is what's here in real life. I don't remember when I took this picture here. Looks like time of year is winter. I don't think there's any leaves on these trees over here. So I don't think there was much going on, or maybe if they were doing something, it was just regular cleaning. So let me just take a couple. Oh, that was a sighting. In case, yeah, I think I've mentioned before, I took loads of reference pictures for Bullet Bill as he was making the map. And, you know, that included pictures of buildings from lots of different angles. And I even got up close and personal with a tin work just in case they wanted to, you know, duplicate the texture somehow in whatever however they texture the building. So that's why that's there. This is the door, the entrance to the seed cleaner. Goes right into a small office, typical pharma office. They got the old regular employment posters on the wall that are required by law. Hang stuff up. There's a place to do a little bit of work. In the old days, there was a counter that came across here. I don't know that they ever had a computer or anything like that in the room. It's just kind of a place to hang out, grab a cup of coffee or something. I think I have a picture at another angle here. And maybe what I should do at this juncture is just take a peek at the layout here. So, or let me look at the pictures real quick. Come to here. Is there any that steps out? I don't really have any of those here offhand. These are all interior pictures, and maybe to help make sense of those, what we need to look out at is a layout. So the door we just came in would have been right here into the building, and here's the small office that I started showing pictures of. And it's somewhat difficult to know how to present the cleaner and the warehouse area because there's been so many changes over the years. Lots of farms, what their primary purpose is to grow a commodity or some kind of a crop, and then they deliver it to someone else to handle it, process it further, to add value to it, if you will. But in the grass seed industry, there are a lot of farms, once they reach a certain size, it becomes beneficial to them to have their own seed cleaning facility. It depends on the variety, but as the grass comes off of the field, the combines do the best they can to, just like with any other grain, to separate the seed from the chaff. But remember, grass seed is really light and fluffy, and it's somewhat difficult to thresh it out entirely. So sometimes, when you bring it in from the field, you may only have 9/10 of a pound of clean seed for every pound of dirty seed that's brought in. And when I say dirty, it has extra chaff, it has husks of seeds that are stuck together, need to be broken apart. It may have a few weeds in there. It may literally have dirt or other extraneous matter, stems, grass stems, and so forth. That by running it through this place, you clean it down. And most of the seed that was harvested in here in the era that I worked in here, I think you had to have at least 98.5% purity. I think it was 98.5. There are some varieties that let you get away with a lower purity. Um, but therein the farmer had a choice. You could say, hey, our seed is 99.5% pure, but all that means is you lost revenue because you couldn't sell some of your inert matter. And inert matter is just things that, like our stems or extra chaff in there. You didn't want to have weeds showing up in your sample, especially if it was a noxious weed, one that was particularly highlighted by the local government as to one that maybe it was a non-native weed they were trying to eradicate that was particularly poisonous or what have you to the area and difficult to get rid of. You didn't want to have any of that in your sample. So you wanted to have it as clean as possible on that view, but 98.5 was good enough. If you did it more than that, you took too much out, and because you wanted to be able to sell the public as much junk as you could, of course. Let me go see. That's about what I was afraid of. We gotta keep an eye on. Oh, dear, dear, dear. I in all this praise I gave Courseplay in Farm Sim 17. Let me just step him out a little bit. Of course, I don't know if our combine is no combine in reach. He'll figure it out. Don't know where he's headed, but hope it's to a good place. Yeah, see, there are times it just behaves wonderfully, and then there's other times it, I don't think it likes us. Like, please now stay in the field. There's no need to visit the trees. And actually, we're gonna have to stay on it here just to make sure that it unloads our combine. We do want to keep this moving because, well, because we got rain coming and we got to make sure we get all this off of here if we can. Tighten just a little bit, but sometimes, yeah, on a hill it doesn't. Oh boy, that's probably not going to get close enough. Well, it did. I stand corrected. Just barely, but it might be enough to get the combine turned. Let her rip, guys. Okay, we'll go back to our diagram here. So I kind of explained the sampling, which is at the end of the process, but the whole purpose of this facility is to take it from the field and get it cleaned and turn it into something of use to the public, which will plant it. And a lot of times, the end of the process isn't at this facility. It gets clean, it gets bagged or held in some other bulk form nowadays, but a lot of times there's seed companies that it goes to and they turn it into other blends, mixes of seed that their market research has suggested that the public wants to have, whether it's in yards or pasture mixes, you name it. So in the old days, we didn't have a pit over here. The only pit we had was this little tiny one that was kind of in the guts of the cleaner, and you couldn't really access it. I think in later years there was kind of a path cleared here. You maybe could dump a box in there if you could get a forklift in there. But when I worked there, this wall was solid and the machinery was here. And so it was more of a small farmer type setup, if you will. So the basic flow was, and this is top down on the building. The building was basically 2 to 3 well, 2.5 stories tall, if you will. So you come in on the ground floor, and then there's all these bulk bins over here. There was 7 of them, and in the roof there was an opening for each one of these bins. And then exterior to the building, there was a ground to roof auger, mobile auger. We had to move around between them, so where you could dump a truck out here on the flat into the auger, and it would take the seed up and dump it in a bin. And we had to keep track of which field and which varieties were in a particular bin. You always had to be careful. There was a lot of sharecropping that they did in those days, and sharecropping as a form of rent is basically where the landowner participates with the farmer in the crop results. Versus cash rent, where the farmer just pays a flat rate per acre to the landlord. Sharecropping means that the landowner was intimately involved in the results of the crop. So you had to hold, and I think my uncles had a number of such arrangements. You had to hold each. It didn't matter if it was a 10-acre field. It had to have its own bin because you had to isolate one particular landowner's seed from someone else's, even if they were the same kind, just to be fair. So we had 7 bins, and, even though during harvest we had the seed cleaner going, sometimes 24 hours a day, it was challenging to keep up with the combines who were out in the field and trucks coming, and these bins would be getting filled up. And we would be trying to empty them in the cleaner and converting it to clean seed and stacking it in the warehouse over here. So, just one of the things that needed to be juggled as part of the work. And then later, as we've seen in some of the other buildings that they had on the premises, they were able to, not only could you store machinery in them over the winter, you could in the summer store bulk seed in them, and then as you cleaned them out, you could then turn around and have bagged or bulk product that you would stick in there that was clean. But in the old days, this is pretty well all we had. If we really got in a pinch, we could store it over in the old barn that still had a couple bins in there. I think I've mentioned that before. We also had that little teeny tiny grain bin sitting out there. I know I've mentioned that a time or two, but it really truly was a pain in the neck to put it in there. Not so hard to put it in, but it could be a booger to get it back out. So we tried to keep everything here as much as we could. Sometimes, too, in a pinch, we would dump a bulk pile in here, or we would take it straight out of a truck into the cleaner, however it was to manage all that. Um, and I really wish, and if I ever get the skill someday, I would love to make a mod to put in here. We have all kinds of tools now, and we did back in the day also. If there was a model of a grass seed cleaner, and I'll show some pictures of them here in a moment, to get it working and you could set up, for ArmSim 17, it would have been Marhu's Fabrik script, the factory script, I think that's factory in German, to run a seed cleaner where you can have inputs and outputs. It wouldn't be that hard to set that up. And I think even now, if you go clear up to FarmSim 22, the game comes with the ability to set up these little factories and what have you. So the tools are there. We just don't have a model for it. Maybe someone out there somewhere could build one. I would love to be able to build one, just don't have the skills to do it. Not yet, anyhow. Oh, I need to be careful talking so much here. Let's go check out our combine setup. All right, looks like it's behaving. Always got to check. It's like petulant children out there to make sure they're still going. So in from the field, typically loaded from an auger, and that was a lot of work. We had standard single axle farm trucks back in the day, and so you'd back up to the auger, dump it in, came out of a little door in the back of it, and there you would sit. And sometimes the seed being as fluffy as it was, you'd have to use a scoop shovel to finish cleaning the truck out. It seemed like we always barely got back to the field in time, so the combines could keep emptying themselves into an open truck. Um, and the trucks were tarped. You didn't want any of the seed flying out of the back en route between the field and bringing them here to the cleaner. Just something you had to do to be careful to make sure you kept as much of your crop as you could. So in one of these 7 bins, we would put each bit of the harvest, and these are all bulk bins, goes in bulk. Um, and this is, I think I showed the grain bin setup in the barn and how it was pretty heavily built. And the bins in the barn were built to even hold wheat. And wheat is a lot heavier than grass, so of course, the 2x4 walls, 2x4s were stacked one on top of another. It must have taken them forever and a day to build up the edge of the bins that way. But in the seed cleaner, that wasn't so. These were standard walls in here with studs and plywood just to kind of keep the separation between them. So the seed being less weight had less pressure on these walls. Now there still was some pressure, and there was these metal rods in here, and unfortunately it's going to be impossible for me to show it because while there were lights put into each of these rooms, they were never used. Matter of fact, they may have even been turned off in the breaker. Because can you imagine having an electric current in some of these light sockets in here when you have seed pouring down in here, maybe even covering them up? And then someone first thing turning on a light, accidentally leaving it on, and it generating heat, and then first thing burning the whole place down. So I don't know if it was a mistake that they were ever put in, but we had to get used to, when we worked in the cleaner, to simply be in the dark. A lot of times we would carry in a portable light so we could see what we were doing. We were scooping the bins out. So, but a lot of times you felt like a mole because you just lived in the dark in here. So the seed ended up in here. Like I say, they could be lightly filled depending if it was a small field. And then if you had a field that say was 100 acres, that was the kind of the larger end on the larger end of the fields that we had at that time. Um, it would fill up the whole bin and then some. And a lot of times, and this was a dusty, dirty, filthy job. If you ran the truck and you have the truck emptying it into an auger out here, the auger's carrying it up and dumping it in. And then if it had a certain number of truckloads in there, I forget what the number was, somewhere from 12 to 15, um, you had to then run into the building while it's unloading, come up the stairs, climb up another set of stairs here, get into the top. It looked kind of like an attic door, and you would go on this catwalk back to the particular bin with a scoop shovel, and you better have a mask on, or your lungs are in for some real torture. And then you would sit there as the seed, you would jump into the pile of seed, and as the seed was pouring in off the auger, you would be scooping away to get it out of the way. And you would scoop and scoop and scoop while the whole truck unloaded. And it was very laborious. You'd be sweating profusely, in the summer. The temperature outside, could be in the 90s. That's pretty common. Summer, upper 80s, 90s, sometimes even over 100. And you can imagine what it would be inside the building, where there's no air conditioning and you're up really high in the building, just sweltering. And I did it one time foolishly without a face mask, and boy, did I pay for it. I probably still have dirt in my lungs from doing that. That really was a stupid thing to do. When I came out of there, for a long while, as every time I spit, it would come out black. So that was some of the pain of getting the seed in the building. Um, and then once you had it in here, well, then the cleaning process started. And we'll see this in a little bit. But whatever bin it was in, you did one at a time. You didn't just take from any one of them because that was a particular lot. And you see here this little pit. There's some lines I put in here. This is kind of an aisleway between all these bins. And this is a floor auger. Back in the day, the motor for the auger was down here, and this was just a door on the end of the building, and the farm field was out here. And since then, they've added more. There's now a pit, and I believe an auger goes into this pit. It's now you could literally, I think, take a truck and dump it in there. I don't know that they do too much of that. It's more they use that in the previous video. I think I showed a scoop that was on a forklift, and they grab a big old batch of seed, probably out of these other bulk bins. They can put it in here. It comes up the auger, and then it goes into this pit, and there's a bucket elevator. I think I've talked about bucket elevators in here before, where it's this big belt loop. The cups to take it up to the top of the building might be here, and so it's going up, if you can imagine, straight up away from the page, and then it comes down on the other side and swings around and it scoops up more. And so back in the day when I did it, it was 100% hand labor, almost 100%. When you first opened a bin, there wasn't regular doors on a bin. They were wooden slats that kind of held back the pile of seed. And I'm asking you to use your imagination a little bit. I don't know that I have pictures of all this, but it would hold back the seed. And so when you opened a bin, a lot of times for a while, it would flow out of the bin, especially on this side. It would flow out of the bin into the auger, and you could just watch the seed pour in, and you just kind of monitored it as you filled your seed cleaning hopper up here. And now let me go back to the field real quick and check on our children. Well, so far so good. Appears to be offloading. Let's go back to our diagram. So once the seed was in here, this is dirty seed, it would take it to the top of the building. And the reason you transport it straight up is so you can harness the power of gravity. So you would take it to the top of the building, and then there would be a chute out of the belt conveyor up there, and it would just fall out of the bucket elevator into a big uh, basin, if you will. We called it a hopper. And you could down below see how full the hopper was. It had a couple windows in it, and the goal was to fill up the hopper so that you had a dirty seed in here, and then slowly over time it would trickle out of the hopper into the grass seed cleaner. So that was kind of the first part of the process, get the dirty seed out, get it into the hopper for the cleaner. The cleaner's already running, it's running constantly. And so then as it trickles out of this massive hopper you would put it in, it goes through a series of screens. And probably everybody has seen like a screen door with these little teeny tiny holes in it. Well, they make other kinds of screens that you can sift things through, whether, I mean, it could be any kind of product, sand, they may use it for that, or anything you're trying to separate one thing from another. Well, they do that a lot with seeds, and the slots in the screens are of varying sizes and they're designed for a particular type of grass seed generally. So there's, I don't know, I don't remember exactly. There's maybe 5 or 6 screens in here in the seed cleaner. And what it's basically doing is similar to what the combine was attempting to do in the field. It's just the combine is bouncing over molehills and ruts in the field and different angles, and it just isn't as precise. The combine has sieves, which isn't the same as screens, but it's trying to do the same thing. And the combine also has air in it that blows chaff out. This machine also has a blower in it that removes additional chaff. It's a bit more refined in how it does it in terms of taking the chaff off. And as it's pulling things off, it's dumping it down a chute. If it's genuine trash, it's dumping it down a chute. In the old days, it went into a bag or a tub where we could collect it when the bag was full, and we would go dump it in a box somewhere where we got rid of the garbage. We called the garbage screenings. And the screenings would consist of whatever came off. All those things that I mentioned earlier, be they anything from weeds to extra chaff to stems, all those sort of things. And then the good seed would generally come out the bottom, the so-called clean seed. But the problem always is along with the clean seed is you would occasionally have things that you didn't want. There sometimes would be different kinds of seeds in the field, and certain mixing of those seeds was a no-no. For example, if your field was primarily fine fescue, you didn't want to have it polluted with something like, say, ryegrass. So, but that's extremely hard to clean out. And then there may be little weeds that come through. Sometimes little weed seeds are the size of a dot. I mean, they're even smaller than the smallest of grass seeds. So a lot of times they would drop out the bottom along with the good seed. And so you still had an issue to contend with. So let me go back out to the field, make sure things are on the up and up. And you know what? It appears it is. Yeah, it definitely becomes easier to do the harvest once there's a number of rounds done. So let's go back to here. So I put here just other cleaning equipment, and this I put in dotted lines. Years ago, like when I worked in here, there was 2 seed cleaners in here. 2 of them that had screens in them, and they both worked in concert. And then when it was done in here, there was a bank of other machines over here called indents. I don't know why they called them indents. Probably because these were big. Uh, they had these big barrels in them, if you will. The seed would drop in on one end, and the barrel would be continuously rotating, and the seed would gradually make its way through the barrel till it got to the other end. Well, there was a little indentations or indents in this barrel. It was a big heavy steel barrel. I think there was a stack of 4 of them or something to handle the outflow from, both machines. And these little indentations or pock marks, if you will, were designed to pull out those little tiny weed seeds or some of the other undesirable seeds. I think there was another weed that we commonly pulled out called rat tail. I don't know what the technical definition is or whatever, but it would pull those out too, and it would segregate those out. And so there was a bank of those over here, and once it got through those, it was deemed about as clean as it ever possibly could be. So it would drop out of there, would hit another elevator, I think maybe even down here. In later years, there's just one seed cleaner, and I think they have another type of machine here, which I'll talk about later, but the principle is the same. It has these little indentations in it designed to pull out weeds and other extraneous matter. So whether it's out of this or out over here where we had them, again, use your imagination. I didn't draw them on here because there's been so many changes over the years. And then it would take it from there and drop it, once again, raise it to the top of the building, and then it would drop it in a clean seed chute. And clean seed chute, all it is it's another hopper, and at the bottom, another job of the operator, the cleaner, was to bag up the seed. And these hands, I'm looking at my hands, have done I don't know how many thousand bags of seed over the years, loading them up. The outlet to the hopper that held the clean seed, it had a scale built in. It would hold a bag, so it knew every bag was 50 pounds. And I apologize, I don't know what that is in kilograms for those that would take it that way. Not very heavy, but not light either. So you pack it into the bag. We had a sewing machine that we would use. In the old days, even before my time, they would simply sew them by hand. They had a sewing needle. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that, and it's a good thing because there was lots and lots of work to do. So it was handy to have an industrial type sewing machine to handle the bags. Now, I don't know how much they put into literal bags anymore. During the time period that I was there, that's how all of it was done, pretty much universally. I don't know there was much of any bulk clean seed. And I think part of the reason that it was in the bags was, I mean, industry standard for one, but it made it easy to sample. Periodically we'd have people come to the warehouse and they would stick their probes into these bags at random, kind of through the whole stack, whatever a lot was identified, and they would make their sample from that to see how clean the lot was. So that's kind of the basic process. And of course we had a forklift in here. I didn't draw that held the pallet. All the bags would be stacked on a pallet, stacked over here in the warehouse where there was space. We'd keep a lot in a single row. The operator, the cleaner, had to pay attention to the hopper to make sure it was always full and kept it running, had to make sure there was no trash gathering in the bags or tubs around, and if there was, would have to empty them into a box. In the era I was in there, we had a big old box sitting in here that we dumped the trash into. When it was full, it was taken out here to a screenings trailer and it was dumped in there, so the operator had to do that. The bags that all the seed was put in, you had to stencil them all. I mean, you had to keep the place clean, the floor clean. There really was a lot of work to do, and it kept a person pretty busy, especially when you had some pretty heavy seed and heavy throughput. So you know what? I see I'm at the end of the half hour here. I think I'm going to terminate the video here, and probably we'll just continue it in another one here, visiting about the cleaner. Now that I've given kind of the basic outline of it, I can maybe show some pictures and talk about it a little bit further. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate you stopping by, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.